Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about renting in Switzerland. Whether you're planning to move to Switzerland and looking for your very first apartment, or if you've been living here for some time and thinking of changing your apartment, stick around and I will share my experience and my tips that can make this process less stressful and less expensive. I'm Maria. I've been living in Switzerland for more than 7 years. I've changed 4 flats. We rented from agencies and from private landlords. We rented short-term and long-term, as well as we terminated our contract at the end or during the lease period. And in this video, I will share my experience and tips that will save you some time and money. I am planning to make 2 parts of this video. The first one will be for people who are planning to move to Switzerland and looking for their first apartment. And the second one will be for people who are already here and planning to change their apartment. So let's start with the very first flat in Switzerland. If you're planning to come to Switzerland for the first time, most likely you found a job here. And the easiest and the most straightforward way to rent your first apartment in Switzerland is if your employer provides you accommodations for the first time. Many employers know how difficult it is to find an apartment in Switzerland, especially if you don't have all the documents. And before you move here, you don't have the documents. And actually, a few months after you move, you still don't have all the documents required to apply for a flat. The documents include your residence permit and maybe passport, your employment contract, 3 last payment slips in Switzerland, and certificate that you don't have debts. And big employers, or maybe not even big employers, provide the accommodation for the first time. In my experience, it can be from a few months up to 1 year. And in my opinion, this is the best option. So if your employer provides you with accommodation for your first time, for the first few months, that's already super nice, and probably you don't need to watch this video and you probably need to go to the next video directly, because this is gonna be a temporary accommodation that you might need to change at some point. There are many benefits of having this first flat. First of all, the biggest advantage that you don't have to look for a flat, because that's really time consuming and energy consuming procedure. Second, the price is usually lower than the market. And third, the notice period is usually 1 month. So you can leave the flat, give it a 1 month's notice. And you will see later on that this is not at all the case for the long-term flats in Switzerland. And fourth, these flats can come furnished. This can be also advantage and disadvantage depending whether you move with your belongings or not. But more on the belongings later. There could be also some disadvantages. For instance, my employer provides really small studios, and depending whether you move with a family or not, maybe it can not be an option for you. Maybe other employers provide bigger flats. But other than this, I don't see any other disadvantages, and as I mentioned before, this is the best case. And if you have this option, I highly recommend to go for it. I highly recommend you to ask your employer whether they have this option, because if they do and they might just not tell you, you will lose this opportunity. For instance, I knew that they can provide studios, but I was too shy to ask. Don't ask me why. But even if they don't tell you that they provide, I highly recommend you to ask whether they provide, because in case they do, it's really a very good option that will release lots of stress. Your second option is another short-term lease, would be renting from Airbnb for a long period of time. And many people opt for this because when you start looking for flats in Switzerland, you will go to all of these websites, and the only thing you will learn from these aggregators, only the price of the market. It's nearly impossible to rent something when you are abroad, and if you find something, most likely this is a scam. And we will cover scam a bit later in this video. Of course, you will overpay because renting Airbnb is more expensive than renting long term, but sometimes they have a discount for people who rent for more than a few weeks. The advantage of Airbnb is that it is furnished most of the times. You can then probably adapt your stay if you need to stay longer upon availability. And Airbnb hosts provide you with a name on the letterbox, which is required to get all your admin stuff, bank account, to register in the commune. The third option would be some agencies that provide furnished apartments for short-term rent. I haven't used those myself, but found online several options for you. The first one is a service that connects people who want to temporarily sublet their flat with people who need a temporary flat. The second one is a hotel-like housing that has mixed reviews on Google Maps, so you make your own research, and in my city it is located not in the best neighborhood. The third one looks similar to Airbnb and proposes multiple flats in the area. And these are my three options for you to find your first flat in Switzerland. And as you noticed, all of them are short-term rentals. But most of the rental flats in Switzerland are rented long-term. But for those flats, you need all the documents in most cases. Sometimes you get lucky, and when agencies desperately need someone to take over the lease or to take an apartment, you can get this apartment with incomplete file. But this means that this flat is not in demand, it's either overpriced or in bad condition, or it's combo. I'm strongly against renting long-term your first flat in Switzerland, because once you sign your contract that you're into this flat, and when it's long-term contract, the landlords are so much protected in Switzerland that depending on your contract conditions, you will be responsible for paying rent for this flat for at least 1 year. And if you don't want to do this, you will need to find next tenants, but more on this on the next video. So that's why I'm strongly against renting long-term your first flat in Switzerland. Because if you find something when you're abroad, in the best case scenario, this is the flat that is not in demand, and in the worst case scenario, this is a scam. And talking about scam for flats, I don't find it very often, but when you look for flats and you get lots of rejections, then you eventually come across scam when people eventually contact you. Yes, you can rent this property, blah 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 blah. At some point they can ask you for deposit or anything, but the flats that they advertise never exist. And the easiest way to know that the flat does not exist is to look at the sockets. That's how it looks in Switzerland, and most of the scammers, they put some European sockets. If the scammers go further and they get Swiss apartment pictures, just keep in mind that you never transfer deposit for your landlord account. All the deposits are made in the bank on your name and name of landlord, or with the rental deposit insurance with the insurance company. But all of this already concerns long-term contracts. And the entire point of this video is to tell you that in 99% of cases, for your first flat in Switzerland, it will be short-term apartment. Because in all the other cases, it's either scam or really bad apartment. And this brings me to another off-topic, whether you should move your belongings with you. Personally, I moved here with 1 or 2 suitcases, but I was young, I didn't have anything Actually, everything was rented before and I came here with nothing. But many people come with their furniture, with their cutlery, like tableware, everything. That's a big question whether you need it, because most likely for your first flat you will live in short-term, usually furnished apartment, which will have this stuff, and just keep in mind where you are going to store all of this stuff. There are storage options, and we used one for another reason, and I will talk about this in the next video, but they will cost you hundreds of francs per month, and in case your belongings are just IKEA furniture, I don't think you should bring it with you. Also keep in mind that many people come and leave Switzerland and there are lots of turnover of furniture, and you can find tons of furniture of different conditions and different price on marketplaces. Also, many tenants that leave their apartment, they try to leave their furniture or sometimes sell it for low price. So if you move to someone's flat eventually after your short term, most likely they will leave something for you, or they will sell it to you. And in case they take everything with them, you can always opt for either new furniture in the stores or for second-hand furniture from marketplaces. This was my main message for people who are planning to move to Switzerland and looking for their first apartment. Don't get desperate. It's quite difficult to find your apartment even when you live here, even when you have good job, good salary, everything. But it's even more difficult to find when you are abroad, and most likely you will not find it. But don't get desperate. You can always opt for temporary options and they will be just fine, because if you take your long-term contract right away, you are not familiar with the market, you're not familiar with the environment, neighborhoods. It can be a really bad neighborhood. So it's really better to come here and to take your time to find your long-term flat, because it's very important, because your signature on the long-term contract means a lot, and once you sign it, you are responsible for paying rent for the next 12 months at least. And good luck to find your next tenant if you want to move. But more on this on my next video. I will share our experience of changing flats and what are problems that can appear that you really don't think about them. And to recap, the best option is if your employer provides accommodation. And if they don't tell you when they give you a contract, just ask for it. They just probably didn't mention it. Second, you can opt for Airbnb, which will be more expensive, but still completely valid for all the admin stuff. Third, you can find flat with the services that are meant for short-term rental. They are also appropriate for all the admin stuff as well. Fourth, I don't recommend at all to rent long-term, even if you by any chance can find long-term contract from abroad, because it's either bad apartment, bad neighborhood, bad price, or all together, or it's the scam. I wish you all the best with your flat hunting. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope it was useful for you, and I will see you in my next video where I will talk more about long-term rental.